SBA Live. I think it just went live. Sorry. Hello, thank you for joining us on another SBA Live. Welcome to people who are returning and maybe first-time viewers. I am Matt Van Drimmelen. I am the founder and owner of Full Circle Aftercare. We are a service-based aftercare that white labels our services under funeral homes and hospices and some law firms. And we support the family in helping them wrap up all the next steps after someone passes away. So our service is kind of free to the family. They don't have to pay anything. We don't sell anything to families. We don't think that families should be in a situation where something's sold to them or they have to pay big fees. We're just there to help them in the name of that funeral home or hospice. And so it's kind of a new trend within aftercare. And I am so grateful. I just had a meeting yesterday with someone who said, the very best part of Full Circle Aftercare is Nikki. And I think that's a pretty accurate statement. So it is absolutely fantastic. Nikki, you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, I have been lucky enough to be here at Full Circle for 5 years now, and I really feel like it's my home. It's my place to be where I love helping people. And as director of operations now, I don't deal one-on-one with the families as much, but I deal with all of our funeral homes and hospices, and I make friends all across the country. And so I'm glad that someone mentioned me. It makes me know I'm doing a good job. So
You really are. You're doing a great job. And it's really you and our other team members that makes this difference, right? I think it's pretty scary for a funeral home to decide to let someone else come in and serve that family. And whether it's a pre-need agency or someone else, like an aftercare company, making sure that the families are being treated the right way is scary. Same thing with the hospice, right? Like they will remember that. And we have been blessed with just the most amazing people, and their care and their passion to take care of people is really what keeps us in business and makes us. That's our secret sauce, is those amazing people.
absolutely. They come from all walks of life. We have so many different kinds of people here who work for us, and it seems like this type of work causes people to be drawn to us. Like they will see a job listing and think, oh, that's something I want to do, or something I would enjoy doing. So that's very common for anyone who works here.
Yeah, I agree. It's almost like a calling.
Yes, very much so. We're all cause oriented, much like hospice workers.
Yeah.
And much like funeral directors who feel, that they are pillars in their community and helping families through these times.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Sorry, we got jets flying overhead.
We do. Air Force Base.
We're right by an Air Force base, and so every once in a while they do exercises. So we'll get that for just a few moments. What are we talking about today, Nikki?
Today we are talking about how aftercare makes a difference for families, how that helps families through it, and ultimately how that also helps the clients that we partner with, the funeral homes and hospices. So I suddenly can't hear you. There we go.
Sorry, you there?
There we go. Yeah.
So last time we shared a lot of stories about aftercare making a difference with families' lives. I love some of the stories you shared about individuals and what their experience was like, both before and after having that aftercare situation, and having someone there to walk through it. I was just at a funeral this week of my sister-in-law's father. So I don't know what that relationship is to me, but and talking to his widow and just the relief on her face, saying that we'll be there to help her any way we can, that's what it's all about right there. Yeah. Making the difference in those people's lives. So if it's all about the family, what do we do for the funeral home or hospice? How are we making a difference for them?
That's a great question, and one we talk a lot about when we have funeral homes or hospices inquire about adding our services to what they're already doing. And so we can go through the technical things we do, and then I think we can go through the things that come from us doing what we do. So, yeah. So as account management and operations, one thing we offer all of the funeral homes and hospices is we have a very good loop of feedback. So when we help a family, they provide notes to us about the family. We pair them with the right people to do the aftercare appointment with them. But then we also do verbal surveys, which really help our clients. They help them know what they're doing well, maybe things that need improvement, or sometimes we're that safety net to catch some things that have gone horribly wrong that they really need to address. And we can become kind of that middle person to help the family ultimately feel better about their experience too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a big thing about that one-on-one personalized service-based aftercare is having that safety net, making sure that every family has someone calling them and checking in on them, right? Uh, I was talking to a funeral home owner. He took it over from his father. He's been in the business for, he said, 27 years. Uh, and um, and he said, I always worked for that moment where at the graveside, the services were over, you gave the family a hug, you handed them a card and said, call me if you need anything. And then you just hoped and prayed they don't call you. And it's not that you don't want them to call you. It's just you don't have time for them as a funeral director, right? You do not have time to follow up with them. And he then said that his best friend, who was like his brother, passed away suddenly. And he was so active in the funeral and everything, and the grief he felt. And then he had that funeral director there hand him a card and say, call me if you need anything. And then there was no follow-up. He
Yeah.
didn't hear from anyone. No one reached out to him. And he said, the silence was deafening. And he said, suddenly I realized what these families are going through. Yeah, they're not reaching out to me. They may not have any immediate needs, but they feel so alone with those next steps. And I think that's what's so rewarding is being able to represent everything that they've done, whether it be a hospice and their social workers, or whether it be a funeral home, everything that they've done to serve that family, being a continuation and an arm reaching out to that family and being like, we're still here for you. We're still going to be one-on-one taking care of you with that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I will say that even, hospices are required to do the 13 months of bereavement. And so they have a little bit of that reach out already built in, but we all know that the hospice workers are always overloaded. There's always a huge list of people to contact. And so providing our estate help is actually a great way to expand a bereavement program for hospice.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just at a convention down in Disney World, a funeral home convention last week, and I was talking to a funeral home there, and they realized that families needed resources after this, so they've been using a digital solution, right? An app that would help the family kind of understand what those next steps were, and give them a checklist of things to close out. And then when I explained to them, well, I think the difference between a service-based aftercare and then just providing a resource for closing accounts is having that one-on-one person talk to each family. Because it's going to do two things. It's going to feel more personal to the family. And two, we're going to be able to get the feedback that you as a funeral home need, because you want every family to talk to you. If you have one family who's upset, you want to know exactly what they're upset about or what their experience was like. This goes beyond the survey. It's just that one-on-one conversation. And she was like, you are absolutely right. I love that idea that each family would have that one-on-one personal reach out. And I think that's one of the big ways we're making a difference is giving that feedback back to the funeral home and the hospice. Hey, this is what this family is experiencing. This is what their needs are. And what differences you might make as a business, or what things you're doing really well that's making a difference for those families.
Yes, and if we look at it from the family's point of view, having an app is great, but it's basically just the digital version of what the funeral homes used to do, which is hand them the paper that has the list of things. Like there's no live person to ask questions to. There's still a lot of unknown, which causes a lot of anxiety and fear for the family when there's no one there to actually walk them through it. So
Sure.
in the younger generation, they probably do a little better and then can take a nap, but they're still going to have questions too. So
Well, and with that, at the end of the day, it just is going to spit out a checklist that they have to make those phone calls. They
yeah,
have to do that stuff, and it's a much better experience if you have someone who can do that for you and just be like, I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to make these phone calls for you. I'm going to make these notifications. You don't have to do anything. That's what the family should be experiencing at the end of a funeral home service.
absolutely. I agree 100%.
Well, it was interesting we said that because just yesterday I got permission from Tom to share this, but we got feedback from a family as we were asking them what was their experience like at French funeral homes down in New Mexico. And this Terry said, the reason we went to French instead of New Mexico cremation was specifically for this aftercare. We wanted to make sure everything was addressed and closed down, and we don't know what we don't know. Oh, we don't know what we don't know, right?
We say that all the time.
Don't know what we don't know. And Cassie, who helped him, she sent a note to everyone like, hey, this is what this family said. And Terry gets it. What that was so rewarding for us to be able to make a difference, not only for Terry and her situation of trying to wrap up all those estate issues, but also for French, right? That's one more at need case. That's one more that's going to help with market penetration, market growth, because they are now known of going the extra mile for those families. And
Yeah.
that's a great place to be in as a business.
Yes, it is. Because, I mean, we've seen the progression of aftercare over the last, I mean, you've been doing this 10 years. I've been in here 5. But the progression of people even knowing or expecting some aftercare as part of what their service is, that kind of expectation is growing and growing the more years we do what we do. And I love it when I see feedback where a family already knew that they wanted aftercare and they knew what it was. And so that is amazing.
Just this morning, I was listening to a podcast about the founder of Enterprise Rent-A-Car. So this guy, he was a military veteran, kind of floated around for jobs for 20 years. And when he was about 40, he was a used car salesman. He decided to open up his first rental car business. And everyone laughed him, made fun of him, ridiculed him. There's no way he was going to be able to do it. Here he had 17 cars that he could rent out. And he was going against the Avis and the Hertz and the huge juggernauts. And he couldn't get a spot in the airport, And he said, well, I can only control one thing. I can control the customer experience. And he said, I will make sure that the customer always has the very best experience. And that is what they held true to, right? They're the first one who go and pick you up, so you have a better experience and whatnot. And now they're the largest car rental company, right? And Warren Buffett, I know he tried to buy him at one point, and I've heard him give us talk about how mad he was. He wouldn't sell it to him, and he says, and it quadrupled in size after I tried to buy it, right? And he didn't sell it to me. But you think of these little funeral home owners or these EDs for hospices, they may be small, and it may feel like there's just too many market pressures out there, right? You have these big corporations coming against you. It feels like you're just this little guy, you can never win. But what you can control is the customer experience. And where the customer experience is going to be elevated is providing services, delighting them by providing services that they didn't expect. And so aftercare can be one of those services, right? When they get that phone call and they say, hey, I'm here for you still. All the next steps you have to take care of, me from the funeral home, I'm going to take care of you. That's what our aftercare is all about. That means so much more than a text message. That means so much more than an email. It means so much more than a checklist or an app. It's that one-on-one service that just delights customers. And by controlling that aspect, right, of an amazing customer experience, that's when you really grow. And that's when you have more market penetration, just like what French had with this lady saying, I'm choosing you. It wasn't about price anymore. It was about that experience and that value.
It reminds me also of the story you like to tell about the funeral home in Texas who signed multiple family member pre-need plans because of the aftercare service. They wanted to make sure they all had it. Yep.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember early on in our days, I was talking to this woman who was a little German immigrant, and she had this thick German accent, right? And we were helping her with her husband's case, and we were going through it all. And at the end of it, she said, "Well, thank you. This has been so helpful." And the daughter was on the phone the entire time, and the daughter asked, "What? I just have one question. Who's going to help me when my husband passes away?" Right? And I was like, "Well, I wasn't actually. It was Tom." And Tom said, "What do you mean?" Uh, and and she goes, "Well, my husband has actually been diagnosed with a terminal illness, and he's going to pass away soon, and I'm going to have to go through all this for him. And we already have a pre-need with a different company." And said, "Well, give us the information. We'll be sure to help you when your husband passes away." And we did that, and that sister talked to all of her siblings. Now, that mother had 10 children,
Oh my gosh.
and they all lived in the area, all but one.
Mhm.
And all 9 of them and their spouses came in and bought a pre-need with our funeral home just because they had gone this extra mile to serve this family twice, right?
Wow.
With his aftercare program. And so yeah, it should lead to me more pre-need and at need by going the extra mile and serving families through an aftercare program.
I think that the idea of the word of mouth referral is one of the strongest marketing techniques ever, because it's not just somebody reading something off a website or looking at a Google review, which are always taken with a grain of salt.
Right.
But it's actually someone they trust who has used the service and they hear their firsthand experience. And that word of mouth, it's just so much more powerful than almost any other kind of marketing.
Right. So the question is how do you get that word of mouth, right? You have 3 types of customers. You have the people who are really mad at you, kind of hate you, right?
They
You want
probably
them
hate
to
everybody.
shut up, be quiet, right? And those ones are important because you want a safety net. You want to make sure you know about those customers, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's what's, I think, one useful area is we're able to pick those up and find that. And I'll tell a story about that in just a second. The next one are those people who are just kind of apathetic towards you. Like, "Oh, it was nice. It wasn't
It's
great."
fine.
But then you got the advocate customer, someone who was so delighted by their experience, they felt you went such an extra mile that they're now an advocate and talking to others. If you've ever read The Tipping Point, which is just a fantastic book, it talks about this, about how when someone really becomes an advocate and starts talking to others, people really hold on to that. And that is the most valuable piece of advertising they will ever hear, is a recommendation from someone that they know and trust, right? This is my experience. They really went the extra mile for me. That will be way more powerful than anything else that they see out there. And so creating those advocates is important, and it can be done through the power of moments, the power of creating experiences for that customer that really wow them and kind of take it to the next level.
Yes, I read a book called, is it The Power of Moments, a book, or just called
Yeah.
Moments? That one also
The Power of
talks about that,
Yeah.
and it's amazing. Yes.
Absolutely.
The cherry
Absolutely.
on top idea.
So an experience we had early on, one of our first customers out of Texas, we had the phone got passed to me, and the state specialist was helping this family. And she thought that because it was the funeral home, we're right little in the funeral home, that I was the funeral home owner. And so she's like, "I want to talk to your boss." And she was hopping mad, right? And what had happened was they were all set up to go be buried in National Cemetery. The last moment, they figured out that her husband was a felon. And so you
Oh,
cannot be buried in the VA cemetery if you're a felon, right? You lose that right. And nobody had told them this. The funeral director hadn't taken the time to actually figure that out. And so they had gone all the way from Texas to Florida. They were all ready to have it. They'd already paid for the transportation costs. And now they were stuck. And it was not a good situation. She was really, really mad. And so I just listened to her, understood what was going on. And I said, in addition to all this, I know you have these other things to take care of. Can I do our aftercare service for you at the very minimum? Right. And I'm not the funeral home owner, but I'll talk to the funeral home owner about these, making it right for these other things. So we went through the aftercare process and we found benefits she didn't know about. We closed out accounts. We got all the VA stuff taken care of. We had everything done. And then I immediately got the owner of the funeral home on the phone and had him call her back almost immediately. And when he did, she said, well, if I would have talked to you about 2 hours ago, you would have heard an earful, but your team has been so helpful for us. I really appreciate it. I just wish you would have asked those questions so we didn't have this embarrassing moment of trying to bury my husband in the cemetery and it wasn't there. And he says, I'll take it back to training. But he just called me and he's like, you saved me. Here's someone who would have been out there and just bad mouthing our funeral home for years to come. And because we had this experience worked in of going the extra mile and helping them, it took someone who was on this like negative side, and she's probably not someone who's going to go and expel all the great things about that funeral home, right? But at least it moved her to the side where she's not complaining to others, right? And so I think that extra service can do for a small business owner, a funeral home, or a hospice.
Yes, that's an amazing story. And I've seen it time and time again as managing all the accounts at Full Circle when I am emailing about issues, things that have happened, where we're able to catch so many things. Or I can make a recommendation like this service actually hasn't happened yet because they wanted us to call them before the funeral. You better get with them right away and do this, this, and this, because this was their feedback today. I mean, there have been a lot of times that we're very, very helpful in that way.
Yeah. And that's going to differentiate, right? That's going to differentiate in a huge way. If you look at the hospice side of it, I saw a magazine article, and it's been so many years now. I wish I would have cut it out. But there was a magazine article in one of the hospice magazines that was talking about for families, hospice is hospice, right? They don't recognize the difference between hospice. They just think of it as a program. Yeah. And they went back and some company had interviewed or surveyed a couple hundred different families after 6 months after the hospice service was over. And they just asked them, what was the name of the hospice that served your loved one? And it was some abysmal number. It was like 12% could get close to the name of the hospice, right? Yeah. Because they didn't remember it, right? And so not only recognizing that families need that help, but they need a reason to know why you're different. Yes. So that's one of the things we talk about, is with our hospices, is we're trying to ask for those hospice surveys, right? Listen, I know it's a pain in the butt to fill out a survey, and those Medicare surveys, those CAP surveys are long when they're coming out to you. But if you could take the time to fill this out, that allows us to do programs like this Aftercare. I don't know if you know, but we're the only hospice in this area that has an aftercare team here to serve you. And those things, oh, really? I didn't know that. Yeah, we do this out of our profits in order to better take care of our families. Oh, I didn't realize that. And now I feel a little bit more loyal to this company because they went and did this for me, right?
Yeah.
With hospice, you bend over backwards for that patient, which you should. But that next of kin might have seen everything you did, or they might have seen nothing that you did. And they're the ones out there talking to their neighbors, filling out the CAP survey, and doing the Google review. And if they're not served properly, if there's not something that serves them, you might miss an opportunity to grow your footprint as that hospice. And so having that extra mile that's specifically for that next of kin, that differentiates that name and is going to help them be an advocate in the community, is really what's going to help you grow your census.
Absolutely. We had a good example of something that we caught in the last week with a hospice is we we had a very strange occurrence where we had one next of kin reported to us, and then another daughter called back in and scheduled an appointment. So we just had some dominoes that didn't fall correctly, and then that appointment was missed, and the lady was very, very upset. But what we uncovered is that she was very angry at the hospice, but the hospice had her phone number wrong. So the whole time her mother was on hospice, they left messages, but she didn't get a single one. So
Wrong
she
person.
thought the entire time on hospice that they just didn't bother contact her. And we were able to at least connect the hospice back to her and say, guess what? We found out why nothing was working correctly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, what a great example, right? Because we turn someone who's maybe in that negative category possibly into that positive category just by fixing that missing problem, that missing piece of information.
Yes. Yes.
Wow, that's really great. So, how else are ways that we have been able to help funeral homes or other service-based aftercare type solutions?
Well, when we onboard our funeral homes and our hospices, we openly say we are your in-house experts. Like, if you guys have a question, we are now your resource. You send families directly to us, or if you have a question, you come to us. And having that trusted resource to be able to just go to whenever needed is massive. You can Google anything, but do you really know you got the right answer if you just go to Google?
Right, exactly. Right. And we want to be that trust resource and take that pressure off of the staff, right?
Yes.
Funeral directors are so busy. They should
are.
not have one more thing to do.
Yeah.
And following up with the family is so important, but that funeral director needs to focus on the next at-need family. And so having someone on your team who can take care of that for you to make sure that every family is taken care of, not just the squeaky wheels, not just the ones that walk in the funeral home, but that every family is treated the same and every family is taken care of. That's so important. I think I've told this story before, but I just absolutely love it. We had a situation where one of our first funeral homes out of Las Vegas area, they were not offering this to every family because they knew there was some cost. And so they were like, well, we'll just kind of figure out if a family needs it, we'll offer it to them, or maybe we'll ask them if they need it, rather than having every family go through that process. So as Tommy was talking to this widow and said, hey, do you want someone to kind of help you close out all the next estate issues? And she was like, no, I'm okay. Okay, fast forward about 6 months, right? So she lives in a senior community, a lot of death, right? Because a lot of it's seniors, whatnot. But she goes to church one Sunday and she's sitting in the pew waiting for services to start. And lo and behold, this person walks in behind her talking to her friend, another woman. And she's talking to her friend about her experience at the funeral home. She had just lost her husband. And she said, oh my goodness, you would not believe what this funeral home did. I was so stressed when my husband passed away. I didn't know who to call or what to do. And they had this sweet lady call me and she took care of everything. She's done all the notifications. She's got my benefits. She's done, blah, 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 blah. This lady's sitting there listening and she's in the middle of it right then, right? She's dealing with for her own husband 6 months later. And she turns around. She's like, what funeral home did you use? And she's like, oh, this Heights funeral home. Oh my goodness. So she was so mad. She goes marching in that next day and she's like, Tommy, what am I, chopped liver? How dare you do all this extra work for this other woman, and for me, you haven't done anything? And Tommy's like, no, I offered you our aftercare service. She's like, no, you didn't. She was adamant that he hadn't. He's like, I know I did. But she was adamant. People get fatigued in that at-need arrangement.
Yes.
And asking them one more thing, do you want this? That's difficult. So they switched their policy. They're we're gonna make sure every family's called, because some people might say no up front, or some people we might think, oh, they don't have anything. There's nothing for them to do. Yeah, but they have six pages of credit card debt that needs to be called, and those types of things. So they changed the policy to have every family make sure that they're assigned an aftercare specialist. And some families will still say no.
Yeah.
later on down the road, or we start going through it and there's not that much to do. But but being able to have that consistency, really, actually, Tom came back to me, Tommy, and he was just like, it's actually been so great. No one's calling me and asking me this question or that question because I have an expert who's already on hand taking care of it, and it's freeing up my schedule and my time.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's huge because funeral directors are experts at their job, what they do. They go to school to be who they are, and the hospice workers too, the bereavement coordinators, but they don't receive any training about all of those estate matters after. That's information they have to glean throughout their career. And so, and then when families come in and expect them to be a trusted resource, it can be very difficult if they don't actually know the answer. And so that's where we can step in and really, really fill that gap that happens.
Yes, absolutely. Kind of going back to that power of moments that we were talking about. We were at Disney World for the Selected Independent meeting, which I just mentioned. But I don't know the last time, your kids are a little bit older. I don't know the last time you went to Disneyland was. Do you know that Disneyland ends every day with fireworks?
Yes.
And I did a presentation with the first gen group there, and I said, why is that? Why is it that they do fireworks every night? They're like, I don't know. And I was like, well, it's because the peak end rule, right?
Mhm.
People remember the peak moments, whether up or down, right? Either peak, really, really bad moments or really, really good moments, and they remember the end moments. There was a study done at Disneyland where they gave a whole bunch of people these dials, and it would buzz in their pocket throughout the day. And as it would buzz, they were supposed to set the dial 1 to 5 of what their experience was like at that moment, right? So they just ate a delicious churro. Oh my, I'm feeling a 5. I had to pay for the churro. It was $17. I'm feeling a 1.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for Peter Pan for 45 minutes, and it's just a stupid little kid ride. I'm feeling a -1, right? Like, and the average score throughout the day, they didn't tell them what the scores were, was only 2.2.
Oh, wow.
But 6 months later, they went back and asked those same families, how would you rate your trip to Disneyland? And guess what? They kind of forgot about all the other stuff, but they remembered that moment stepping off Splash Mountain all wet. They remember that moment watching the fireworks with their family at the end of the day, bonding together. And the average score was like 4.3 or 4.4.
Wow.
Double what it had been, what their actual score was. So it's important for businesses, when servicing families, not only to service them, but also create moments that become meaningful for them in the long run, right?
Yes.
And those peak moments. So the very important thing is how it ends. What's that last thing that happens? Is it the graveside, handing the card and walking away, right? Is it I'm on hospice, my dad dies, and that's the last time I hear from the hospice? Oh, I got some letters in the mail for my bereavement care, but what's that last thing? Having an aftercare team in place, calling up and saying, you're not alone. I'm here for you every step of the way. Whatever needs to be done, we'll take care of it for you. That's a moment that gets remembered. That's that firework, and saying, wow, that really means the difference. And that's why the peak and the end are so important, right? You can't just have an ending. You have to have some peaks in the moment in between too, right? Like, we can't replace everything. But we are a nice cherry on top for all the things that funeral homes and hospices do for families.
Absolutely. And that very idea is what creates the word of mouth. It's what creates people wanting to do Google reviews. It's what allows other people to be looking for people who feel that way when they read those Google reviews, so that they can find trusted resources. And the differentiation that we can provide by offering this type of end service that wows them, there's not much else to do that with. I mean, it's a very small time frame and niche that we can jump in there and really make a difference.
Yeah. And I think as the funeral home industry especially becomes more commoditized, to my hospice friends out there, you have to realize there is value in funeral homes, right? Some of them just think there's no value and go to the cheapest cremation society possible. That is not always the best case, because I've talked to families on the back end of that, and it's not always a good experience for them.
Yeah.
Right? Funeral homes are really important, but they are becoming more and more commoditized.
Yes.
We partnered with a company that was online only, and they only had one price, and their whole value prop was price, right? It was a race to the bottom, and they just want to be really, really, really low price. And they were. And I talked to the CEO and I asked him, just do an experiment for me. Just give the family a second option. You have your one package with its low price, give them a second option with a higher price. And the second option was like 40% more, right? And the only difference was it had aftercare and it had a couple other things, right? Like rather than a box that came with a basic urn, rather than one death certificate, it came with 5 death certificates. But it was just a few extra things. In the first month that he put that on there, 55% chose the higher priced option.
Wow. It shows they do want value,
right?
And the service they want.
If you're a small business funeral home owner going, oh my gosh, it's all about price, price, price. It's not. It's about the value you create. And aftercare can be part of that, right? Him explaining that there's a team in there that's going to take care of all those next steps. That is going to help them with price.
Yeah.
And that's where we want to create value, because value is something people will pay for.
Absolutely.
We had another funeral home in Texas who he and his competitor, they had one other competitor, and then a direct cremation online firm comes in. And they dropped the price from $2,000 down to $999. So his competitor marches right with him and drops his price to $899 for direct cremation. And he's sitting there, he dropped a little bit, he was at $1899, but he's like, I can't afford to drop it by that much. And I said, start offering aftercare with it.
Yeah.
And he would get these price shoppers call in and they'd be like, how much is your direct cremation? $1899. What? $1899? You're double this online place? Why would I ever do that? Why would I ever do that? And he goes, well, let me tell you a couple things why. One, we do this and this and this, right? You talked a little bit about his funeral home. Two, we're going to make sure you get all your benefits, right? We're going to make sure you get that last payment from Social Security if you're due it. We're going to make sure that all the paperwork is filled out. We're going to make sure all these extra things. There are other things that have to be done besides dealing with your dad's body. And that's part of our direct cremation price because we know how important that is. He's like, once I started doing that, I won almost every single price shopper.
That's amazing.
Started going up. I'm double what everyone else is, and my volume's going up because I'm offering something of value. Yeah. And that's where I think a service-based aftercare can really differentiate a funeral home and really create that price difference, that justification for a price difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I think that too often we assume people are only wanting the cheapest thing. And I think that's a trap a lot of our hospices think that, I mean, they fall into that trap because they think that that is the best value. When in reality, it's not all the time. So
it's how you feel at the end. It's how you were treated. It's what the value you got out of it.
Yes.
Right? At the end of the day. And that is going to create a lasting memory. The value really has to come with what my expectations are and exceeding my expectations. And the beautiful thing about aftercare is people don't expect you to do aftercare. Right?
It's true.
Well, I guess this lady out of New Mexico expected them to do aftercare because that's what they're known for now.
True.
But you don't expect you to aftercare, and then someone's there and like, I'm going to help you. That's a powerful moment.
It is. And I find that a lot of our hospice liaisons are able to use that type of idea when they're going out to the assisted living facilities and the memory care centers and talking to people about what hospice to use. It's a powerful tool for that as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Well, we are honored to work with, I know this one's been a little less information, a little bit more self-promotional, but if you are a funeral home looking to differentiate, looking to get more feedback and a safety net from families, we didn't even talk about pre-need or Google reviews, right? We didn't even touch on that side of it. Consider doing something that really goes the extra mile. Create an end moment, a customer journey experience that just makes a difference for families, right? It will grow your market share. It has every single time it's been tried. And so, we'd love you to consider us, but if there's another way you can do a service-based aftercare, you should do it. Same thing with hospice. Hospice is tough because it's
Yeah.
the same price, right? You can't compete on price, right? It's paid for by Medicare, and it's really hard to compete on services because there's so few services you can do.
Yeah.
The unique thing about Aftercare with hospice is this is the one service that's focused on your next of kin, right? It's so wonderful in hospice. It's the only healthcare where we get to service the patient and the family. And doing something for the next of kin is going to be so important, not only because it's the right thing to do in taking care of that family, but also because they're the ones who become the advocate for you in the community, in that CAP survey, in the Google reviews, and you need something that truly takes care of them in a way that they didn't expect.
Absolutely. The cherry on top.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Well, when's our next meeting?
We have it on August 30th at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, and it's going to be on why protection services are needed for a deceased individual. Like, what does it do? How does it help?
Fraud protection, keeping them away from fraud. Such an important topic. Please tune in. Even if you're not using our aftercare service, we will give you all the tips and tricks on how to help them be protected from fraud. The last thing you want to do is have a widow come in and her husband's identity just was stolen and she's grieving. Awful. And that's October 30th. So day before Halloween.
Woohoo!
All right. Are we going in costumes this time?
We can discuss that off camera.
I already know the answer. Last year I came in as Hagrid. I don't know what my costume is this year.
Oh, you made an awesome Hagrid. It was really cool.
Yeah. I have the gut for it.
You have the personality for it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions or comments, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. You can write the comments here. We'll come and look at them later. And I saw a couple waves and
I know. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
So, and if you have any questions about our service or creating a service-based aftercare for your company internally, I'm happy to help you with any of that. You can see right here our emails. Feel free to email us with any questions.
Yep.
Thanks
everybody.
See
Bye.
Bye.